Hey, Edge Radio Australia, we have got the greater wealth. To my left, okay, we have got Derek Whittaker, and we're about to talk about my other left. We've got Travis Carter. We'll just try to ignore him. Mate, you were just, well, basically, we're going to delve into it today about former Prime Minister, and we're trying to forget his name, Morrison.
Trying to forget.
We are trying to forget. We're trying to forget the current one as well.
ScoMo.
ScoMo.
Mark.
ScoMo.
Oh, yes. Mr. Sales himself. Now, he's got some tax cuts, some deals going on.
He had some tax reforms that were happening. He was overhauling a lot of the things. They call it the third phase to go through. Will Labor actually deliver on that?
Is it the third phase or Reich? I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry.
Wow.
For those who didn't know,
I didn't go there.
Go on.
Stage 3 was apparently abolished the 37% marginal tax bracket,
Right.
Creating a flat tax rate of 32.5%. All right, for anyone earning between $45,000 and $200,000.
Okay, so most of it, middle Australia. Yeah.
Well, the majority of Australians. So it basically is saying that Australia's highest earners will benefit the most. Now, this is that kind of journalism absolutely annoys me.
It's not journalism.
No, it's not. It's opinionated, socialistic, wrapped up in socialism.
Absolutely.
And this is what annoys me about it. I want to call it out, okay, because it's wrong. Okay, if this is a problem with the taxation system in Australia, is that it punishes those who do well. Right?
Yeah.
In school, you would learn, hey, if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. You know, you were taught that from the very beginning.
And they should be teaching, if you work hard, you'll pay lots of taxes.
Yes. And that's what happens in what we call the real world, is that if you earn more, you pay more tax.
Sure.
Now, this is the problem with that, because if it was a simple flat tax rate, let's say everybody paid 15%. Everybody paid 15%. What's wrong?
Your American accent is coming out.
Here it is. God bless America.
Hello.
15%, right? You would put a lot of accountants out of business. Not that I wish that on accountants.
No.
But you wouldn't need all the fancy tax
You wouldn't.
planning, structuring, strategic stuff, because here we go, okay, we can handle 15%. We'll do that.
Yeah, okay.
Away you go. The other benefit that you would have is that you wouldn't push your best entrepreneurs offshore, out of
right.
Australia.
That's very
who
true.
go, we pay too much tax here. There's too much red tape to actually do business. I'm going to go do business in a country that's more favourable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And this is the problem we have. And my best minds, because it has a flow-on effect. This affects businesses that we grow. It affects people that we don't employ, but could employ or should employ. It's a ripple effect.
Well, the small business, okay, which is the vast employer in Australia, okay? Now, that's the one that kind of policy would help. Big business, hey, they're going to find clever ways around it. Let's face it, they're going to...
And they've got the money to pay the hired
Exactly.
accountants, lawyers, and financial planners and all that sort of shit.
A nice place in the Cayman Islands, right?
Yeah.
So really getting down to the guts of it, right? If you're helping everyday Aussies, you're helping middle Australia business as well. You're helping those small businesses, which are the majority of the employers.
But Aaron, you're going to put places like Panama out of business by doing that.
Yeah, here's my thing about Panama. I just don't care. I'm an Australian. I love my country and I love the people. So, you know what? You look after your own backyard first.
Well, according to I think it's the Human Rights Council, you would just be deemed a racist for
I
that.
know. Shocking. isn't it?
Anyway, going back to tax, we'll save that comment for the 5 o'clock show.
Okay.
So I know for a very, very long time, a lot of the people in the mining industry have been like screaming out for a normalised tax system where everyone pays the same. Like, God, that sounds like socialism. But I don't get why our tax system has to be so complicated. Like, is it, to me, as a normal, everyday, well, not normal, but as an Australian, as someone who deliberately left school because I thought it was a joke, I don't get why it has to be so complicated.
Well, it has to be complicated to make money. It's that simple, right? I mean, basically, it's about creating industries. It's creating, obviously, the accountants and so. And I've got a really good accountant, so I like her very much. But
Oh, do you now?
no,
That's not get you in
he
trouble.
had to go there. That's not how I
It's
pay
just
my bills,
like-
mate. I'm just saying.
Had to go there.
If that's how I'm paying my bills, she's getting ripped off. But never mind. Okay. The thing is, if you simplify things, you're absolutely right. You would be taking that money-making industry out of it by making the money industry as complicated as possible. They're excluding everyday Aussies. That's my view, anyway. Yeah.
They're just widening the gap as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because someone like was it Terry Stokes?
Kerry
Stokes in Parliament. They're doing the inquiry into how much money he was making and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And he turned around and said, "Why would I donate more money to the government than I have to?
Oh,
When everyday people can spend it way better than what the government can."
dude, you've just totally messed this up.
Oh, who was it?
Right,
I
it was
don't know.
Kerry Packer.
Kerry
right?
Packer.
Yeah.
I knew it was
Okay.
one of them.
No,
One of those
okay.
big millionaire tycoons.
Yeah, absolutely. A billionaire. Get it right.
The late Kerry Packer.
Absolutely,
Absolutely
right.
destroyed Parliament.
One of the greatest visionaries of all time, that man. But there you go. Okay. Yeah, when because Stokes is the one who owns Channel 7
Kerry
West,
Terry, the same
7 West
difference.
Media, and quite frankly,
Can you get your rich people right?
yeah, exactly. Don't mix them up. God, is there so many billionaires in your life, mate? I just can't keep track.
I know that they're just a dime a dozen in
Yeah,
Australia.
exactly.
You know, like, oh, fucking hell.
Oh dear. But yeah, well, because my point being is with Kerry Stokes. Kerry Stokes has way too much power in this particular state. Like it's crazy. So yeah, let's not give him any
Packer.
more.
Sorry,
Yes,
Packer.
but Packer, you are right. That speech
Yeah.
that he gave to it was a
It was one
a
of the
parliamentary
Senate
committee.
inquiries.
Yeah.
It's funny because he actually succeeded in his parliamentary inquiry, but then we talk about Zuckerberg on his little booster seat and looking like a robot. Like
Yes.
you just see the difference between Australian and the Senate inquiry. They're like, it's a joke. Well, Zuckerberg's like,
Yeah, Kerry Packer kind of sat back and owned the place, right? Whereas Zuckerberg just
he probably did own the place. So
He probably
like,
did.
like, I paid you $100,000 last year. I paid you.
Oh
So,
dear.
Anyway,
enough talk about billionaires and their lifestyles, mate. I'm very interested in this. So you're thinking maybe a 15% flat tax rate for everyone, right? I mean, okay, if you go further and you do all the modelling and all the carry on, right? Okay, will that work?
You'd have to crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
And, I mean, tax. This is the great thing, great inverted commas about taxation is you look at the national debt.
Yep.
You're the guarantor for the nation's debt, basically, and how much they printed. Now, the credit card has been extended thanks to this thing called COVID-19, so-called pandemic. This is the biggest problem, right? That number has just increased. Now, you've got to look at population movement as well. We haven't been taking in new migrants into Australia of late.
Yep.
We've got a workforce that is crying out for, hey, give us more employees so you can increase the employment around here and this sort of stuff. So you'd have to look at what the actual number is. But this is a thing that most people don't realise who have always been an employee all their life, is how much tax you're actually paying, right? Because you're coming out of a post-tax environment. Okay, so what I mean by that is before you actually receive your salary, your wages, the tax is taken out and you're left with what's remained left for your cost of living. Okay, and that's what's expected for you to look at. When you're a business owner, you have to actually plan for that tax to come out. Okay, you are in a much better environment in the sense that you can pay for your business costs first. We call that pre-tax income, and then you pay tax. So you're ahead by that with that edge, and that's why I'm such a big advocate of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
But they don't see it, they don't feel it. I've often had entrepreneurs say to me, "Man, I just had to fork out $30,000 in taxes," and that's simply what's that tax called?
payroll tax.
Payroll tax, which is my pet hate. Tax.
the
because
great killer of employment.
Exactly. You're keeping people off welfare, you're feeding their families, and you're punished for it.
Yep.
And people...
There's one problem here, Derek. You're not a socialist.
No,
You've
I'm
got to
not.
remember, they
Jeez.
don't want people working. They want people unemployed so they can
do.
control them.
Okay. And therein lies the problem. Because it always leads to poverty.
Yeah.
Okay. Things can sound great in theory, dressed up in a sugar-coated sort of spiel. I mean, it's weird. I had a gentleman... I was at the park with my daughters this week, and I had this gentleman who was from overseas originally. I'd always worked in the public service. He's talking to me, and he asked me the question, don't you think there's any benefits from socialism? And I'm like, I could have gone for it, but I was gentle. I was very kind. I was like, no, there's not.
April Sun in Cuba, anybody? Right? Come on. Look.
But I looked at the guy's work history, and I could understand where he's coming from. He had worked in the prison systems as a guard and all that his life. He was now working in the train stations and that sort of stuff. And I thought, okay, he's been a public servant in his life with all the benefits of being a public servant.
Gotcha.
He hasn't ever worked as one, an entrepreneur, running his own business, or two, he's never probably been an employee outside in the private sector.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
It's a whole different kettle of fish. It's almost, I've never worked for the public sector, so I'll be transparent about that. But I have friends who have. I've had a former business partner who has, and he basically said to me this way, it's virtually, once you're hired in the public sector, it's virtually impossible to get fired. You have to do something really, really bad
It
to
sounds
get
like
fired.
another company I used to work for. I used to work with SGIO Insurance, and one of the call centers helping them out. So this is what, like, when I first got married, one of the first jobs, but it paid really well. I was still going through school to learn to become a mortgage broker and all that. And there was this guy there, and it was absolutely hilarious because one of the company policies and the way the labour laws was at the time, you could not fire someone for poor performance. You had to manage them and give them a chance to improve. And so effectively what they did, they managed people out of a job.
Yeah.
So they micromanaged to high heaven, and like just every single phone call was monitored, and you had the boss sitting there with you. And this guy just did not care. So they're like, you got to try and upsell something. He's like, okay, well, we won't change the name. Nothing. Hung up. Moved on. And like, you can't do that. He said, oh, whoops, sorry, I forgot.
Wow.
And it was paid, and that time, like this was around 2012, I think it was.
Yep.
Just a base wage was 55,000 for a call centre work, which was really, really good. And it kind of explains why so many jobs have been sent offshore, especially for call centre work. Because we just can't pay Australians because we want more.
Interesting on that fact, right? Okay, people who get very, very safe in their government jobs. Most government jobs now are slowly not being government jobs anymore. Most of them are being outsourced. So what a lot of people don't know now is there's a lot of companies out there who subcontract in, so they don't have the same restrictions. So a lot of people say you rang, I don't know, look, Centrelink, okay?
Services Australia.
Services Australia. You're not necessarily getting a government worker anymore. You actually are getting someone in a lot of cases who's subcontracted there. Now, the disgusting thing about that is they are being paid substantially less than what the government worker is for the exact same job. Exactly what happened with Qantas recently. They've been outed on Four Corners about that. But then the other thing is the person's not getting all the entitlements. So what they're doing is, which is free enterprise, so there's a positive to it. But the reality is what the government are effectively doing is slowly getting rid of these jobs and getting rid of those people. So a lot of people feel that they're secure in their jobs. You are not. You're absolutely not anymore. Yep. It's disgraceful.
I think it's very interesting in relation to your privacy and a
that
nation's
would
sovereignty.
be my first concern.
That's my biggest flag on that is how much information the government holds on its citizens, and now you're outsourcing that to third countries.
Oh, it gets better. It gets better. I mean, also, it's being outsourced and people are working from home. So, you just look at your security there. Yep. Just look at that. It's insane. Yeah.
Somebody looking over your shoulder.
Yep.
Yeah. Getting back to the other taxes, most people don't realise employees of different taxes. So, you fill up at the petrol station until
excise
late.
Tax.
Yeah, excise tax.
Yep.
GST is constant. Most people don't even feel that anymore, but business owners are always calculating what's my profit margin, how much GST if I'm going to have to pay on this, right? Yeah. Your cigarettes, your alcohol costs, those kind of luxury items.
I love that cartoon where they were talking about Scott Morrison was talking about I forget what the tax is called, the tax on cigarettes and alcohol.
Excise.
And it keeps going up exponentially every year. And he's made like $17.4 billion.
The taxes on simply buying another property.
Stamp duty.
Yep, stamp duty just for marking different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Capital gains.
Boom.
Capital gains tax for investment properties.
Not just that as well. They're now tagging capital gains tax on your cryptos.
Yeah,
because
of course.
Crypto's not a currency; it's a asset.
Right.
So therefore, you pay capital gains tax instead.
Wow.
It's not a currency or like a foreign exchange tax. Because that's the other one. Because I do a lot of foreign exchange, like transferring money from one country to another. So we've got to pay every time we transfer from one currency to the next. We've got taxes on that as well. So it's
people don't realise. Now I'm not making this up, but I'm going to kind of guess the stat. It was something ridiculous. I remember this from about 20 years ago. That when you actually took into account all the taxes and excise or whatever, you were paying something like 94 cents in the dollar in tax if you're a pay.
There was a report about it.
It's crazy.
2016 or 17 before. I remember it was before COVID because I was reading. I was going, "You got to be effing kidding me!" And I dropped the F-bomb. And then I started going through all the different taxes, and it's absolutely gobsmacking how many taxes and hidden taxes that we don't know about that we're still getting done.
That's
right.
right.
Have a look at our water rates. So my water rates at the house where we live is 108. Our average bill bi-monthly is about $182. Okay. 140 of that is rates.
Remember when water was free?
Well, remember that? I wonder where it comes from. Oh, hang on, we don't own that anymore.
No. It's really funny because apparently it's because where we are, we're on deep sewage.
Right.
So it's sewage management.
Okay, of
So I
course
said,
it is.
okay, that's fine. Disconnect me. I'll put some septic tanks in, like $400 a year to empty them, get a guy with a pump out.
Yeah.
No worries. So they said, oh, no, you still have to pay for it.
Yep.
I was like, are you kidding me? So I said, just out of curiosity, do you believe in socialism? He's like, oh, yeah, it's great. It's like, oh, explains everything. See ya. Hung up.
Absolutely.
Because once you see that the person running, like the water corp, is hardcore socialist, like, don't even bother. Don't waste your time.
You're on the grid.
Yep.
Look, the thing is, okay, socialism, communism, there is a positive thing deep in there, okay? In my opinion. They
What,
are seeing-
corruption?
No, okay, no. Think about this, okay? From an idealistic point of view, right, they want everybody to, be looked after. They don't want anyone left behind. There's some positive things. It's about keeping the human experience as positive as possible. The problem is, all humans are very, very different, and their capacities are different, and it just simply doesn't work.
And every
look-
person wants something different to the person next to them.
Exactly. So you
it will
can't
never work.
You can't use that. As I say, in theory, it's great to look after all these people. I don't want to see anybody in the street in poverty. I don't want to see that. Right?
But there's people who want to be living on the street out there.
Spot on.
So,
exactly.
It's
exactly.
just, you can't paint every person
You
the same
can't.
paintbrush. The other
No.
thing as well, like you talk about, like people got to accept people's different cultures and stuff like that. So what's important to one culture isn't important to another one. Like, I got a friend who's Italian. Like, if I want to pick a fight with her, I'll go off and I'll snap some spaghetti, and they go absolutely apeshit at me
Why?
because it's fun and it annoys the shit out of them.
Okay.
She wants the spaghetti nice and long so you can twirl it on a fork and a spoon. And it's like, who eats spaghetti with a fork and a spoon? That's just use a fork and slurp it.
No, I do.
And she goes
I'm the spoon
crazy.
boy.
I've got a Korean friend, and if I want to annoy her, I'll get the chopsticks and I'll just chuck them straight in the top. Because they believe that's the incense at a funeral. So you never ever put chopsticks straight on top of the food when you're around.
But this is
Japanese
more
or
about
Koreans.
you and your desire to annoy people than
Yes.
actually culture, mate. So that's the difference.
But the point is, different cultures have different
Yes,
things they believe
absolutely.
because that's the way they're brought up.
Yeah.
And you can't paint every single person with the same paintbrush. It
You
just
can't.
does not work.
Absolutely
It
cannot.
opens
Exactly
yourself
right.
up to corruption and abuse of the system.
Spot on.
Getting back to your point, Aaron, about helping and welfare and others, right? The problem with socialism and communism is it works great. It sounds great in theory.
Yep.
But the human heart, when there is, I know what you're thinking, when there's a small amount of people who are in control of the wealth,
Yep.
greed kicks in,
Of course it does.
right?
Of course
And it goes, all right, how are we going to distribute to the others? Namely, more to us and less to them. And that's how it's played out each time.
Absolutely.
And I
Yep.
think it baffles me how people don't see that. I just go, can't you see that? Can't you?
I can tell you exactly why they can't see it. And
Why
it's
is that?
because it's not taught at schools. It's not taught in the education system. Like, my mum doesn't understand the difference between socialism, communism, and capitalism.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, they know that they're different words, and one's for big business and one's to help all the smaller people and stuff like that. But you ask her, like, okay, how does it work? How does each of the systems work? They don't know.
Well, okay.
have
Socialism is
absolutely
pretty
no
much
idea.
communism light. Okay, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's the
Socialism is the next step to
Yeah,
communism.
exactly right. It's a stepping stone to it. Absolutely.
So it's interesting you say this. My son loves to stir people and all that sort of stuff. So he
I
was.
think we'll get along really well.
Yeah, I think I know where he gets it from too. And he basically was a couple of years ago saying, trying to embrace socialism and all this sort of stuff. So my business partner came up with a great idea, and so I did this. And I said, okay, son, that's fine. Give us all your money, right? And I'll distribute it amongst all your sisters
Yep.
and mum and dad, and then you can have whatever's left over. He's like, no. I said, therefore, you do not want socialism.
No, that's
and,
right.
and that cured that really quickly.
Yeah.
But how many people do that? Like, how many parents, the moment you see a kid going, socialism is great, it's like, okay, let's introduce socialism into the house.
Yep.
That's
So
right.
you got to share your clothes with your sister.
Yep.
You got to share your toys with your brother. Like, it should be sharing anyway, but when you force it on them, they're like, no,
Yep.
tip for waterworks, and Dad doesn't love me anymore.
Well, you've just said force. Now, the reality is choice. Choice
Yeah.
is something that human nature needs, as far as I'm concerned, right? Even today, I saw a little thing on Facebook, which I might add was on 6PR, and 6PR don't allow Edge Radio Australia to comment on their posts, which I find very interesting. But I can personally, but just not as Edge Radio. Interesting. My point being is that's freedom of speech, right? Now, I made a comment there about what it was is they're trying to outlaw smoking completely, right? Now, I don't smoke. I don't like smoking, right? My parents smoked, but I've never been a smoker. But I believe in people's right to smoke, right? And they're literally, the government is trying to make smoking illegal. I disagree with that. Now, we've got this complete overreach. People need to have that freedom. And hang on, that freedom is the freedom of the market, it's the freedom of choice, and freedom of speech.
So they're trying to ban smoking, but they're trying to decriminalise smoking marijuana.
Spot on.
And vaping's fine.
Yep.
And I guarantee that the argument is because the nicotine in cigarettes is causing cancer. So, okay, so just make cigarettes without nicotine.
Yeah. And see how quickly people
It's a
smoke.
slippery slope. It really is.
Yeah.
Once you start down that path.
But I mean, look, the reason I'm bringing it up is we're talking about socialism, we're talking about communism,
Yep.
and how it affects, obviously, a free market economy, kind of kills it. And that's why when you get so many people who make these comments and say, about how bad this is and how bad free enterprise is, how bad, our system is, let's look at the alternatives. The alternatives take away your choice, right? Choice is very, very important. I remember when old Gorbachev, first time he ever went into a supermarket in America, right? He actually went back, and that's when they started Glasnost, because he was like, oh my God, look at the choice people have. And that was, that's a hardcore communist, that's Gorbachev, for God's sake. And a trip to the supermarket changed policy in the USSR. That's huge, right? Because ultimately people need choice.
And that goes back to my point on the education side of things. He probably grew up saying that communism is great, capitalism is bad.
Absolutely.
Like, that's the sins of America. We can't do that.
That's right.
And the moment he saw it, he's like, you know what? There is room for improvement on this.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and your comment about having the choice, I think is really, really valid. People need to be able to have the ability to learn for themselves. They've got to have the choice to actually think and improve their knowledge on the different systems that are out there.
Sure.
And so that's, I think, really important. Why we're still giving away those
We are.
how to live your life purpose videos.
Absolutely.
So remember, like, comment in the thingy, whatever platform you're on. What else were we doing? And you had to say how good looking Derek was.
Sure. Just add new conditions all the time.
Yeah.
Basically, look, like, share, and comment. Simple as that on whatever platform you're on, and you go into the draw for those fantastic
When should we
tickets.
actually draw it? Because we haven't put a date on it yet. have
We're
we?
a couple of weeks away. It's all good. It's all good.
Did we actually put a date on it?
We didn't. No, we didn't.
We didn't. I thought you were going to say, yeah, we did. And I was
No,
like,
no.
Oh, was I in that
I know when
meeting?
I want to start the course, but that's subject to
Yeah.
working with you guys.
That's
so,
right. We'll
yeah.
finalise that very, very soon. So all good.
We're going to a hardcore meeting. I mean, drinking coffee after this, and we'll make a decision.
Sounds great. So coffee and a kebab is our whole meeting. Okay. With that, let's have a quick little break. We've got fantastic music coming along in just a tick. Travis, stay here, mate. Travis, you don't. Oh, you need your coffee. No worries. We'll be back in just a tick. It's Edge Radio Australia. The Greater Wealth. On his own for a bloody reason. It is, of course, Travis Carter.
It's so I can stretch out and relax. It's not my fault you guys have duck's ass disease.
Oh, thanks, mate. Look, I think it's like this. I often call you the shaved down chimp.
No, look, I actually am shaved.
Yeah,
To get a haircut for the
Again,
weekend.
shaved down chimp. Exactly right. Or our resident 4-year-old. Really. That's it.
Well, they're both the same.
Yeah,
I was thinking
yeah.
about that other day. I was like, you know what? I do act like a teenager. And I was like, hang on, how old am I? And then I had to go work out how old I was. And I was
You
like,
complained that the door handle was too high for a man who's 6 foot high, but never mind, right?
Hey, come on, 6'3" minus the back injury.
Of course. So 5'8". Now, Derek, you got some important stuff to talk about, mate. It's about cost of living, something that actually affects everyday Aussies.
Oh, gotta love headlines from the media. Cost of living crisis, it's being called. Look, there was a report that came out from the ABC
Bastion of truth there.
mid-August. We'll just go with the numbers, and they're saying that it was comparing Australia's cost of living to other parts of the world. It's quite interesting
Right.
How we compare. Apparently, we're at an inflation rate as of June, and it's always fluctuates. Here we are in October.
Sure.
Back then, it was 6.1%, which was a 21-year high.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, we're not. This is the funny thing at the moment. Are we in a recession? Well, the United States technically is,
Yeah.
because it's 2 financial quarters back to back that have had negative growth.
Yeah.
with
But
their-
they don't identify it as a recession.
they're trying to change the wording on it and
Yeah.
the definition. Australia
Like
hasn't had
same-sex
that.
marriage in Australia. They just changed the definition
Yeah.
of what marriage actually
Yeah.
is.
So the United States occurred to Australia. What is interesting is that there has been a 2.4% annual growth in wages for the March quarter.
Sure.
But, the biggest things that people are hurting at is, of course, fuel, rent rises, and also food.
Kind of fairly important stuff. Keep your roof over your head. Food,
Kind of the essentials that...
Our rent. Like our tenants are struggling as it is, so we left them as they are.
Yeah.
We're nice.
You're the kind landlord.
I'm the kind landlord.
Good for you.
It's good because the fence blew down and we still haven't fixed it yet.
On a side note, if you've got great tenants, you want to look after them. Of
course.
as a
hell
landlord,
yeah.
because the headache of, hey, we'll raise them, get rid of our good tenant and try to find a good one that will pay that rate but also look after your place. A lot of it is about preserving the asset.
Of course it is.
Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to get rich off it.
The two tenants, and I hate to say it, they're both young kids under 20. We've had headache after headache after headache because it's in Geraldton, Anyway, so one of
For those who don't know who Geraldton is, how many? That's what?
it's 4.5.
Well,
It
4.5
depends
hours
if you
from
got a
where you
Commodore or
live.
not. If you got a Commodore, it's about 3.5 hours.
Fully sick.
Nitro, man.
Sorry, it's not a Commodore anymore. It's a Mustang.
Ooh.
So,
okay.
is that a Ford? Yeah.
We were
well, they're
talking
both
about
idiots.
Mustangs
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
And so it's 440 kilometres to the 440 Roadhouse, which is just north of Geraldton.
Okay, I was just only thereabouts.
Yeah.
About 4.5 hours.
Can we have the coordinates, please?
Okay, so longitude, no. Anyway, so one of our tenants actually hurt his ankle. He plays a lot of basketball, so he had to come down for treatment for a week. He's
Yep.
like, can I be late a week's rent? It's like, you know what? You guys have been awesome. Just don't pay rent for 2 weeks, get your legs sorted.
Good stuff.
And so we just gave him 2 weeks rent free. So.
Yep. And you know what? He's going to look after that property because of that. Okay. And it's a two-way street.
I hope so, because that's the side we renovated. So
Oh, dear.
that's the side that got burnt, and we had to do the full renovation on.
Gotcha. All right. Okay.
We're
so,
still hurting over that.
So, but fundamentally, almost everybody except for those at the top are hurting at the moment, let's face it, right? And at the real sort of grassroots level, let's face it, rents and mortgages, are going up, okay? Food is going up at a crazy rate. I mean, it really is. You go do the grocery shopping, right? It's just, like at the moment, basic stuff, fruit and veggies, my word, right?
We don't have that problem. We grow our own.
Oh, well, okay, there we go. Some of us have got time, okay?
You put an orange tree in, the next thing you know, it's like 2 meters tall, and you got endless oranges.
I've been saying to people, if you can grow your own, because one, it's healthier for you.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
exactly what pesticides haven't gone in.
And
and you've got your
mulberry bushes we
independent
can't
food
control.
source.
But I think a lot of this is educating yourself, knowing what's going to thrive in your area and what's not. So we have longans in our backyard that struggle. We have a mangosteen in our front yard, which is getting absolutely blasted by the sun, which it should not be getting blasted by the sun. Luan's dad planted some plants that we should just never have had in the first place. So they struggle, and they're probably going to die shortly.
Sure.
Luan's roses, on the other hand, I intentionally accidentally hit them with Roundup by accident. I swear it was an accident, so we lost some of them. But, the citrus fruits are doing great. The mulberry tree, we actually cut a branch off a mulberry bush to use as a stake, and that all of a sudden started growing. So it's about picking what you don't actually have to care for.
Well, you see, that's interesting you say that. I mean, I choose my plants. This is no joke. Okay, I go to the nursery and say I'm after plants that are named after Van Damme movies. Hard to kill, hard target, stuff like that. Because I can't grow things. Okay, simple as that.
Yep.
But I've got a little chili plant in my kitchen that's growing. That's happy. I've got one chili. It's going well, right? But you are absolutely right. I mean, getting down to basics. I'm talking about the food from the point of view of this is it's a fundamental thing we need for life, and people need to eat fresh fruit and veggies, right? So why not grow your own? That's a damn good point. Damn good point indeed.
The other issue, I mean, if you compare it to other countries and how they are faring. So if you look at the United States, inflation rate at that time of this report was 8.5%.
Okay. Well, what?
8.5%.
Holy, yeah, okay.
Okay, and at the pump, now Americans buy it in gallons, but this is in Australian dollars. To compare it, they were paying $1.52 a litre.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The average house price in the US is $492,000, just above that. Okay, so that's an indication of where things are at. Our friends over the pond, New Zealand, 7.3% inflation rate. This is a figure that surprised me. Okay, they're paying more this didn't surprise me. They're paying more for fuels, $2.72 a litre.
Oh, wow.
But the average house price, I didn't get this, just over $895,000.
How is
Australian,
that? What?
Was this New Zealand?
New Zealand.
Well, there was just a report coming out that because of the property problems at the moment, their prices on average is losing $10,000 a month on house prices.
Wait, New Zealand?
New Zealand has gone down rapidly.
Wow.
So this is
Okay.
what I'm saying. Like, a lot of the stuff is saying, like, due to taxes, interest rates, inflation.
What are they
everything like
losing on house values?
that. On house
on the
values?
capital?
On average, they're losing $10,000 a house
I didn't know that.
yeah, per month.
Well, look, I remember it wasn't too long ago. Well, it seems to me in my world anyway that I remember seeing US prices for housing. Right, you get all these ads. You say buy a house in the US,
Yep.
da, 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 da. And I'm seeing these gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous places for like 230, 240,000.
Yeah. That was GFC, 2008, 2009.
Well, okay, that just shows how
During
much
the
of
GFC, you could buy houses in a lot of the American towns, like the really dodgy ones, for like $1. They were giving them away.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
but you wouldn't want to live there. That was
That's
the
right.
thing. Look, I actually invested in the US at that time.
Okay,
I
smart move.
ran a property syndication there.
Yep.
And yeah, it was astounding how you could buy them for less than what you could build them.
Sure.
At that point, and
And
it
now
was so
it's
skewed.
now it's off the charts.
But the thing
Well-
is, that happens in all countries. Like our place in Geraldton we're talking about. 2 3x1 duplexes, we got both for $70,000.
That's insane.
You've got to
So-
compare it though. I mean, the United States is so diverse across its 50
Sure,
states.
sure.
Okay, so what you would buy in in New York,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Compare that to what you might buy. In
Ohio.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's going to be
Louisiana.
vastly different. So it's all
It's
averages.
relative, I guess. Okay. Okay.
So-
I mean, it's hard from all the way
I
over
jump
here.
in.
Jump.
So just quickly, we have got some comments here. So
hit
from
us.
Josh, believe it or not, we do have listeners. I was on a different tab, so I didn't even see the comments. So,
Oh.
so what annoys me about the CGT, so capital gains tax, is not offset against inflation. If the government devalues the currency, they get to change your tax on the increase in the value you need to make to keep pace with inflation. So that's actually a really good point. So
It is.
in summary, so if the inflation is 5%, and let's say you make a 5% profit over a year, and then you sell it, you've still got to pay tax base on that 5% without taking
When
inflation
really
into account.
the goalposts have moved. And
There's no
profit.
You
in
made
real
no
terms.
profit
Yeah.
out whatsoever. So that's actually a really good point, Josh. So during the break, Nicole said, "Hey, we can still hear you." Thanks, Nicole. And also he was saying about the roses, rose hip. Apparently that's a fruit on a rose. You can eat
Really?
it. It's very high in vitamin C, but probably don't eat it after the roundup. So yeah, we are getting comments coming through. So yeah,
Very
And
cool.
the United Kingdom, 9.4% in inflation.
How does oh my
9.4.
word?
To fill up the tank, you're paying $3.03 a litre in Australian dollars.
Wow.
And the average house price is over $505,000 over in the UK.
Wow. And the
I
tax
wonder if
charges,
that's
you know,
because
7%.
of they're so reliant on the fuel, diesel and energy
Oh, look.
coming from
Well,
Russia.
the energy crisis is the big one that's hurting
Absolutely.
Europe at the moment.
Yep,
Yep.
yeah, for
The
sure.
big one. I mean, Germany. Yeah, you look at the stats on Germany. That's where it's got to be hurting them.
Oh, look, and we've all talked about, Putin maybe just turning off the taps completely and all that sort of thing. This is obviously pushing inflation up,
I'd
Well,
love
this
to.
was back in July.
I'd love to see that
Oh.
now.
Yeah.
No,
oh,
August. This was back in August.
Sorry,
Okay.
my apologies. Whoa, imagine what it is now. Okay, yeah. Different world.
So,
That's interesting.
it's kind of interesting to compare that when you put it for Aussie dollar per Aussie dollar, what you're paying.
Sure.
I mean, obviously in the UK, you don't travel the distances you do in Australia. So that
10-minute walking in another country.
Yeah. So you've got to keep that in perspective. It's all relative, but yeah, interesting times.
Oh, look, so in other words, don't buy a Hummer if you live in the UK.
Unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because he's a big environmentalist
That's
driving a Hummer.
He'll be back.
I love how he has a tank on his own property.
Oh, yes.
Does he really have a
Oh,
He
nothing
has a
like being
tank.
absolutely
an actual working tank?
Actual
hypocrite.
working military tank.
I wonder what the licensing fee on that would be.
I don't know if he takes it off his own property. So
Because I know, the golf cart buggy
wouldn't you
things.
love one of those?
I'm
They had the
not
neighbours
going to
around.
lie. I'd have one. If I had the means, I'd just go, just going to grab the mail, okay? Get him a Sherman tank and off I go.
You would do that as well.
Oh, look, man, look, I would.
I'd feel sorry for the postman that delivers it at your Oh no, here he comes.
I'll be there. This better not be bad news. Don't be bringing me bills. Look. Let's cut the crap. I tow my bin. My letterbox is 220 meters from my door. Right.
And you measure it every step of the way.
No, I did because I was trying to exercise. So I was trying to figure out how much exercise. So I do. If I do 2 trips back and forward and whatever, it ends up I get a K, right? But I tow my bin up. Okay, I put it on the back of the car and I tow it up. And I was thinking to myself, oh, if I get things going a little better, I'll buy myself a golf cart and put that on the back.
You know what's really funny? Golf carts are actually licensed as motorbikes, so you can drive them on the road. Like,
Really?
you can put a 1100cc motor into them, and they absolutely fly.
Okay, but here's the next problem I've got. You've just said that. I would now get a cart and put a Hayabusa motor in it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, but then again, there's people who put the
roll cage
125
on.
motors into, you know, the old folks like the Gophers.
Yeah.
So there's a video, and this gives you an idea about my personality where I grew up, and it's like you're going down Mandogalup Road, which is
I know
off the
Mandogalup
freeway
Road,
into Mandurah, and there's this dude on one of these old folks things banging down the side, like on the footpath, and he's going faster than the cars, and it's a 90 zone, so they're probably doing 100. So that guy's doing like 105 on a footpath in an old folks Gopher.
Do you know what? That is all about living your life purpose, as far as I'm
Exactly.
concerned. Okay,
Like-
okay, you grow old disgracefully, right? That's what
So
that's my plan.
Knowing Mandurah, he probably lost his license for pissing anyway. So I was like, you know what? I'll just go put a motorbike engine in this and get around it. Like electric scooters. Why do they invent electric scooters? So for people who lost their license doing pissy, like drink driving, so they can still get around.
So back on the subject of inflation. What can the government do to bring inflation down?
The government.
I'm inverting my comments.
All right.
Government can't do shit. They'll just make it go higher.
Well, I think what they've done in terms of up to now, in terms of not taxing fuel, in Australia was a move that was helping businesses.
Got to give Pauline Hanson a big tick on that one. She is the person who pushed for the reduce on the excise.
So I think
thank you.
I think that's a big one. I think we need to produce our own goods in Australia.
Yep.
Look at being less reliant on importations and that. I think on an international level, I think the United States needs to produce more oil. And sell it to the world, and that will
Especially in
really
England. They need it at the moment.
that will really help with inflation.
Imagine that. Seriously, I mean, the price in the UK, what they're paying for fuel, it's pushing people, and it makes me not amused is probably the wrong word, but just actually probably annoyed. They try to push people into electric vehicles, and now they're talking about all the fees for running the electric vehicles. Now, to me, there's no way, the two are not mutually exclusive. If you're pushing up the price of fuel, you're trying to use that to push people into the green energy, right? Mm-hmm. The taxes and the cost of fueling up your electric vehicle now is becoming so incredibly high too. Mm-hmm. So, where do you win?
Well, this is from my personal point of view. Anyone who drives a electric vehicle is morally corrupt.
Right.
Because
Well, they may not know that, Travis.
Well-
In terms of, I know where you're going.
Yeah,
with this.
I
with the
agree.
way they mine the
Not that, with
lithium
that.
and the cobalt, like having children dying from cobalt poisoning, I just personally, I cannot stand why anyone would even contemplate buying an electric vehicle.
Your
at the moment.
mainstream media is certainly not going to talk about that.
Of course
That's
they're
the
not,
issue.
because
That's the issue.
that's making them insane amounts of money.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm flat out no. Give me a diesel any day.
Your diesel any day.
So-
You know what? If there was a ethical way of doing it, okay.
Yeah,
then
and that's the key point, ethical. So I personally feel I think there needs to be a bill released, at least in Australia, because we've got some say in here. We need to make a bill that any products that are morally, like using kids to make Nike shoes, like, that should not be allowed to be imported into Australia. Like,
No.
If they, let's say the country has a minimum working age of 4.
Oh.
So you should not be importing stuff from countries like that. You've got a moral responsibility to make sure you do not do that sort of
But
shit.
then every Karen in the world's going to go, oh my God, well, I can't shop at Kmart anymore.
The way they get around that is very simple, though.
They go to Glencore, the company.
They go to a different company, they sell it, and they buy it off a different company. and
Yeah.
So they've got to be able to prove. Like we
They do
have-
the Ukraine move.
They
let's
have
face it.
certified beans that what is it? Environmental beans that are certified that they're not produced from old growth countries.
Getting back to electric vehicles, the interesting thing about this is, I don't know if you saw this last week, silver jumped 10% in
No, I didn't.
over 2 days, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay. What happens if silver goes up in price? This is going to affect the whole electric vehicle industry.
Of course it will.
because it's affecting even the solar industry. The cost to produce it, if silver goes to, let's say, $100 an ounce,
Right.
that's going to have a major flow-on effect in terms of the pricing of solar, electric vehicles, all that sort of stuff. And I don't think people have thought that through, what the costs of precious metals are.
Yep.
And when they go up, those commodity prices, how that's going to affect their industry.
The other
Very
one
true.
that I found really interesting with silver is there's a few countries around the world, because obviously in Australia we see silver as an asset, so you can actually invest in it and buy it, stockpile it, and then sell
Sure.
it later. Singapore, they don't actually see it as an asset; they actually see it as a commodity.
Right.
So if you have the thing where I think it was 1932, where the American government signed a bill to say you had to surrender all your gold,
Mm.
in Singapore, because it's a commodity, not an asset, they can't confiscate it.
I heard someone put it this way, and it's really interesting. Gold is for different countries to do deals with
Yep.
and securitize certain things.
Okay.
Silver is more for individuals.
Yep.
I thought that was an interesting comparison. I mean, there are people who stack gold, stack silver, etc. But there's sometimes in the back of the mind, particularly with the American stackers, will they confiscate gold again as
Yeah.
they do that?
Yeah,
and,
makes sense.
And so
Make
they
a new gold tax to steal your money off you.
right. But it's interesting.
So
in the
they're
US,
coming for you, Aaron. I don't know if it comes up in
They do.
the interesting thing in the US economy is a lot of their coins have been actually physical silver, and coin collectors try to find those, US silver dollars and that sort of stuff. So there's a different approach in terms of looking at the two different commodities.
Excuse my ignorance on this one, because I knew it had happened. I didn't know, but I don't know why. Why did the US start taking people's gold from them effectively?
That was back in 1970. No,
It was
it was before
32.
that. Sorry, I'm getting confused with Nixon depegging it from the golden standard. Can I get back to you on a bit more research?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was taken away in the gold standard, as I understand, in
1972.
1972.
Yes,
Yeah, I
I'm
did
getting
get that.
confused.
My
that one.
understanding was during the Great Depression, America was running out of money to fund all their bonds and everything.
Sure.
So they wrote IOUs to take people's gold, and if you didn't surrender your gold to the government for a bond, they actually fined you.
Well, I think you're right, actually. I think
Yeah.
I read that. Yeah.
Interesting sort of thing. It still plays out today.
Right.
Right. So I have a cousin who owns his own funeral company. Funerals are very different in the United States.
Well,
They
big business.
display the body and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
If they do a cremation, here's where it gets interesting. They have to return all the gold fillings to the US government through the ashes.
What?
Right?
Yep.
It's interesting what comes out in a cremation. I know it sounds a little bit.
Yeah, macabre.
It changes. It changes your perspective on
Yeah,
life and
yeah.
death when you go through this. And so I went down in the morgue and saw bodies, corpses there, and he was showing me how they filter. The heart pacemakers come through the ashes and all that, but the gold has to be collected, notified in terms of the documentation, and returned to the US government. That's how. At what nth degree it goes to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I've got a bit of a morbid mind, and like when you heat things up, like you remove a lot of purities. Like my first question is, after you get the gold out of the cremation, like is it still 24 karat, or does it change the carat rating? Or
I don't know how they do fillings. I don't know. I don't think it would be 24 karat in fillings. It would just be too soft for what it's got to do to munch food.
Yeah.
But the gold itself looks black when it comes out of the furnace. I've seen it.
wow, that's fascinating.
And how they filter it. So they take the ashes and they filter it through, and the gold.
Wow.
Yeah. So that law that you've just mentioned.
Yep.
They're still
Still
collecting
right.
gold from
That's gross, but okay.
teeth.
Right.
I just thought I'd throw that in. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, wow.
with that-
They take it really seriously.
So before we go, we do have some more comments here.
Yeah.
So just going back to the electric vehicle side of things, the same people that locked themselves inside for 2 years and loved every second do not seem to GFA give up.
Yep.
About the oncoming nuclear war. I'm guessing he's talking about Russia and Ukraine over there. Well, that is effectively a trade embargo on China in regards to morally correct imports.
Yeah, it would be, exactly.
But
So that
when
came
you
up
talk
with
about
close in a minute. Yeah.
the so-called free trade arrangement, that's
Yep.
one of the most restrictive trade agreements I've ever seen. And finally, nobody would give the government their gold these days, a lot less trust in authorities. So
Very true.
I wonder if they did try to do something like that in Australia, considering how many firearms we have, I wonder if that would actually trigger a civil war.
I don't know. Well, you know what? We're not in a great position for a civil war because obviously back in...
There's
what
not
was it?
enough of us to have a good one.
Yeah, well, back in 96, they took their guns away from most Australians, let's face it. So,
And we lost the war to emus, so...
Right, and McGowan obviously put out the list of every West Australian who has a gun, so there you are. Now, we've got about 30 seconds, boys. Finishing words there, Derek.
Well, if you haven't signed up for the free competition that we've been giving away,
Yeah, absolutely.
Live Your Life Purpose how to fund your life purpose and do it like the wealthy do. Time's running out to get in on that. So all you need to do is like, comment, share. I'd like to reward, if we could, Travis, some of the people that have been commenting today.
Let's do that. Definitely.
So why don't we
access to that. It's valued at $47.
Yep.
Why don't we do Josh and we'll go Nicole?
Okay, great. So
Awesome.
We'll send you PMs and we'll let you know how to
You
get the
will look
videos.
after that, Travis?
Probably
Pardon.
not. I'll forget. But
That's
just
why
in case
I'm
I do
pointing at
forget.
you right now. Thanks for listening, everybody. It is Edge Entertainment Australia, Edge Radio Australia, doing the Greater Wealth here. Thank you very much, Derek. Really appreciate that. Travis, thanks for showing up, I guess. And with
You're
that,
lucky. I was pretty hungover this morning. So.
I know, mate. And you look at Edge Radio Australia.